All right, so as I like to do every week, I want to close out this show with my Ignite segment, where I like to take a passage or a topic or an idea or maybe a question you have and go over that and try to answer it as holistically as I can from God's Word, and maybe we can better understand what God is saying here. And so one of the popular sayings that goes on in Christian circles is this idea of God won't give me more than I can handle. And you think about that, and again, this whole idea, this whole topic of pain that this whole show has been on, we like that because that makes us feel good. But is that true? Is that really what the Bible has said? We usually get that when we go to 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13, that says that there has no temptation that has overtaken man that he can't handle. God is not going to give you more than you can handle. The temptations in your life are no different from what others experience. And God is faithful. He will not allow the temptation to be more than you can stand. When you are tempted, He will show you a way out so that you can endure. So we take this text and we say, okay, well, God's not going to give me anything that I can't handle to do in this life. But where we get it wrong is that God isn't talking about everything. There's one key word in there that we often get wrong, and that's the word temptation. You see, the Apostle Paul is specifically talking about temptation. He's saying God is not going to allow you to be tempted to a point where you can't handle it anymore and you're going to have to give in, because temptation, if you give in to temptation, that's what leads to sin. Temptation isn't a sin, but giving in to temptation is a sin. So God doesn't want us to sin. So He's saying, I'm not going to allow you to be tempted above the ability for you to handle it. And with every temptation, you're going to have a way of escape. So let's look at the real issue here. Will God give you more than you can handle? I believe absolutely He will. Why would I say that? Listen to what the Apostle Paul says in 2 Corinthians chapter 1, starting in verse 8. He says, "For we do not want you to be unaware, brothers and sisters, regarding the affliction that happened to us in the province of Asia, that we were burdened excessively." Listen to this. "We were burdened excessively beyond our strength, so that we despaired even of living. Indeed, we felt as if the sentence of death had been passed against us, so that we would not trust in ourselves, but in the God who raises the dead." Do you get that? The Apostle Paul, one of the heroes of the faith, one of the greatest men of all time that we believe and talk about, and we get so much of our theology from, he himself said this. He said, listen, I was living life and I was doing ministry and I was doing what God wanted me to do. And there became a point in time that God allowed something to happen to us. He gave us something so heavy that it crushed us. I had a weight on my shoulders and I couldn't stand up under it. It made me collapse. It was too much for me to handle. And he said he got to the point that he didn't even want to live anymore. He said, I wanted to go home and be with God. I wanted the pain to end. I wanted this world and its troubles to be past me. Indeed, we felt as if the sentence of death had been passed against us. Do you want to know why this happened? Listen to what he says. "So that we would not trust in ourselves, but in God who raises the dead. He delivered us from so great a risk of death, and He will deliver us. We have set our hope on Him that He will deliver us yet again." You see the hope that this period produced in Paul? Paul was like, we had no way out. It was something, you see, if I can handle it, right, then I don't need God. If I can get through it, I don't need God, right? But it crushes us, so we realize that only God can work in this situation. Only God can give life to this situation. Only God can rescue me from this situation. And then when He does, guess what happens? You're like, hey, I trust God now. So now anything else that happens, God's got it, because He got me through that. God crushed me. God gave me too much for me to handle. God gave too much for me to handle. And He handled it. I didn't need to. I gave it over to God. I said, God, maybe it's time for me to die. That's fine. My hope is in you. But I would like to be rescued. But I can't do anything about it because I'm crushed. So we have to understand better what God is trying to communicate in certain passages. God will definitely give you more than you can handle so he can get you where you need to get. Tony Evans says sometimes God allows us to hit rock bottom so we can see that God is the rock at the bottom. And so God will give us too much to handle so he can crush us, so he can get us where he needs us, so we can become who he wants us to become. And now when we're who he wants us to be, we can live how he wants us to live, and that's when the blessing and the peace and the satisfaction invade our hearts and our lives and our minds. So understand that God will give you too much so that you can trust in him and not in yourself. You listen to Degenerate Thinkers, where we're inspiring you to think holy.